Hello, I'm Abha Adams and I'm back with a new story. It's a trifle long, so I hope you're sitting comfortably. It's called Genie on a Holiday and it's by Liji, Ravindran. The first chapter is Off to the Beach. Rohan and Kabir went on holiday every year with their parents. For most of the year, they lived in a 3-room apartment on the 8th floor of a 10-story building. On weekdays, Daddy and Mummy went to their offices and the boys went to school. The brothers spent their shorter autumn and winter breaks and half the summer vacation at their nanas or dadas, where they usually went by themselves because their parents couldn't get time off work. But 2 weeks of the year were reserved for the family trip. Daddy picked the spot and made the reservations and all the other arrangements. Mummy got everything ready for the travel and the stay. Kabir counted the days with restless excitement, and Rohan complained. Rohan was 12. Life was boring, and he complained incessantly about the choice of the holiday destination, about the mode of travel, about the things he would miss, chiefly his bicycle. He complained about the ghastly alien food he would have to pose for and eat, and the pictures he would have to pose for, about having his little brother following him around like a shadow. In short, he complained about everything. His whining was generally ignored because for all his grumpiness in the build-up to the holiday, Rohan was usually the one to enjoy it the most in the end. He would spend all his time outdoors, which was where he loved to be. 8-year-old Kabir was exactly the opposite. His favorite pastimes were watching TV, playing games on the computer or the mobile phone when he was allowed to, and racing his beloved toy car all around the house. His mother was not too happy about the time he spent gaping at the cartoon shows on television, but the alternative was sending him out under Rohan's supervision, which was an even less appealing idea. Rohan fancied himself as an explorer, and his bicycle was his favorite companion. But he had to pretend most of the time. There was little to explore around the large residential complex where they lived. It had 8 multi-storied buildings, walled in by a tall fence, and a small park, overcrowded with children. Cars were zipping across the roads all the time, and the sidewalks were full of exercising adults who glared or shouted if you accidentally ran into them. The residential area was close to a busy and dangerous highway, so the security guards had been instructed to keep an eye out for unaccompanied children trying to sneak out. Rohan's only chance to escape this concrete jungle was on the rare weekends Daddy took him to the wooded park in the city's outskirts. Rohan's school, however, was green all round, and his favorite time of the day was after school, when he would wait for the school bus to take him home. He always took the second bus trip out so he could spend an extra half hour climbing trees or walls or zipping down the old concrete slide that the students were forbidden to use. Rohan loved riding his bike and running, but climbing was his real passion. Nothing compared to the sheer joy he got from locking in a rock or a tree as a target, ascending to the top and standing there victorious. He hoped to become a mountaineer one day and conquer every mountain peak in the world, including the mighty Everest. Only he wasn't sure he would be allowed to become one. His parents had lost count of the number of times he had bruised his arms and legs, sprained his ankles, or scraped his knees pursuing his adventures. His father often remarked that Rohan's legs, covered in scars from toes to knees, looked as though he was forever wearing a pair of random patterned socks. The battering he took never bothered Rohan. The biggest problem with shinning up trees and walls was that they had branches or rough edges that snagged and tore his clothes. Although he was only 12, Rohan, according to his mother, had already soiled, torn, or laid to waste enough clothes to clothe the entire family for 2 generations. A new pair of trousers barely lasted a week before it frayed or tore or split at the seams, and school uniforms had to be bought by the dozen. His mother was constantly tired of washing and sewing up clothes and buying new ones. On his 12th birthday, Rohan's parents had bought him an entire set of clothes with a warning that if he damaged them, he would have to spend the rest of the year without wearing any. His mother conjured up a horrifying picture of sending him to school in his underpants. Rohan was sure she would be as good as a word. That curtailed his outdoor exploits a great deal. It made him even more irritable than usual when his parents announced that they were going on a seaside vacation that year. It was a strategic choice. There were no trees or rocks for Rohan to climb, and they would take rooms with no television, so Kabir would be forced outdoors. "What am I going to do on a beach? I can't swim." "I'm not going. No way," Rohan insisted. "That's good," his mother said coolly. "We were looking for someone to house sit anyway. You will save us the trouble." Chapter 2. A little mischief will do no harm. The beach resort was nice. The family had a cottage to themselves. Much to Kabir's delight, it did have a television, conveniently turned to the cartoon channel by the occupants before them. After the first couple of days, however, the novelty of the seaside wore off for Rohan. There was nothing to do, and he constantly complained to his parents. After lunch on the 3rd day, while Daddy and Mummy nipped off for a quick siesta, Rohan slipped out of the cottage and made his way to the beach. He sauntered along the beach with his hands in his pockets, wondering whether to wade into the water, which was shallow and appeared to be calm. Eventually, he decided against it. Water was just not his thing. For one, he could not swim. Plus, there was only a handful of people lying around on deck chairs, reading books or sunning themselves. None of them looked as if they would bother to rescue him should he drown. The lifeguard tower was manned, but the boys there were a useless lot. Only the day before, they had stood around sniggering while Rohan flapped his arms around desperately as a fearsome wave tried to pull him into the sea. Of course, he was in knee-deep water, had an inflatable vest on, and his dad was holding him. But what good were lifeguards who couldn't spot a crisis? Rohan was tired of building sandcastles, so there was nothing much to do. There was a rocky outcrop farther ahead with some tantalizing climbs, but that was very much off limits. His mother had told him so in no uncertain terms, the way they had checked in on the day they went into the resort. He was making his way to an empty beach umbrella to think of what to do next when he realized he was being followed. "Kabir, you pest!" he shouted. "Go away! Shoo!" Rohan was in no mood to babysit his brother. "Why don't you go watch TV?" "Mummy's had the cable disconnected, so there's no TV in the room," said Kabir, pushing up his glasses, disgruntled. This was true, but his mother had also given him a secret job to keep him occupied. He was to tail his errant brother for the remainder of the vacation and make sure he did not get into trouble. "Whatever he says, stick to him like plaster," she had said, and like plaster, he'd stick. "Then go find something else to do," said Rohan irritably. "Let's build sandcastles," Kabir invited him. Sandcastles are for babies. Do it yourself." "Shall I get the beach ball?" "No, go away. I'm trying to think." "I want to do something. I'm so bored." "Aren't you bored?" "Yes," said Rohan, turning over an idea. had just occurred to him. Kabir was Rohan's key to getting all manner of things done without inviting too much of their mother's wrath. His little brother was a bit of a pet with their parents. If Kabir got into a scrape as well, it usually took a bit of the sting out of the punishment that they got when they got busted. Of course, it would be hard to get him to not blabber and tell their mother everything. Rohan thought it was worth the risk. "Look," he said, putting an arm round Kabir's shoulders. "I've got an idea. It's going to be super fun." Kabir shrugged off his brother's arm. He knew that tone of voice. "Is it going to get us into trouble with Mummy? You remember the last time you got us grounded with no play and no TV for a week? And I hadn't even done a thing." "No, of course not. We are just going to collect seashells." "Seashells? Yesterday you said they were too tiny and worthless to be bothered with." "On this beach, yes. But you see those rocks over there?" He pointed to the outcrops. "No way, Jose! That's out of bounds," said Kabir, before his brother could utter another word. "We are not going to climb the rocks. Just look around them," said Rohan. "You see, the waves wash all the nice and the big shells onto the beach, but drag them right back. But over there, the shells would snag on the rocks and just lie there for us to find." "Really?" "Of course," said Rohan confidently, although he had no idea if that was true. "We may even find one of those large spiral ones we saw in the curio shop." "Wow," thought Kabir. The big pearly ones that had taken his fancy in the shop were nautilus shells. And oh, so pricey. Imagine actually finding one on the beach and taking it to school to show his friends. He wavered. "But if Mummy gets to know?" "She wouldn't, would she?" There was a note of warning in Rohan's voice. "And besides, we are not going to do anything dangerous. Just poke around the rocks. We will let the lifeguard know we are here, okay? So he'll keep an eye on us, just in case." There was a young man lounging about on the tower. Rohan smiled and waved, and Kabir did the same. The lifeguard puffed out his chest, clearly admiring and enjoying the attention of the young admirers in front of him, and he waved right back. "There, now he knows," said Rohan, as he hustled Kabir towards the rocky outcrop. Rohan's plan all along was to have his brother safely comb around for shells while he gave him the slip and went off to explore the rocks. Chapter 3. And this has a very interesting title. It's called Not a Weird, Smoky Chemical. Rohan's heart sank a little as they got closer to the outcrop. The rocks were steep and looked slippery. The waves gently washed over them. There were tangled, slimy brown weeds all around, and even slimier, wart-like objects sticking to the black rocks. The two got a fright when what looked like a large pebble from a distance unfolded its many legs and scuttled off as they approached. Climbing those rocks wouldn't be easy, as it did look from a distance. "All right, get searching," Rohan commanded. Kabir looked suspicious. "There's nothing here, and ugh, it stinks." "Go on, there's got to be something." The boys spread out, searching. In a few minutes, Kabir had found plenty of nice round pebbles and a few small conch shells to keep him happy and completely engrossed. Rohan was only pretending to search. Away from the eyes of his brother, he tried clambering up one of the smaller rocks. It was too slippery, and he couldn't get a foothold. As they rounded the outcrop, the rocks were drier, but weathered and coarse. They had trouser tearers written all over them. That gave Rohan some pause. He wavered between the inviting rocks and inviting his mother's wrath. He did not notice that he and Kabir were no longer visible from the beach. And then the purple and green can happened. Rohan and Kabir noticed the familiar tin can at the same time. It was lying in a tiny pool of water between two large stones. Lazola, Cola's Cola, chorused the two as they leapt at it. It was a can of Lazola, their favorite drink, endorsed by their favorite actor in their favorite advertisement on TV, featuring their all-time favorite jingle. And miracle of miracles, it looked as though the can was unopened. Kabir, who was closest, reached it first. Rohan, who was not allowed to drink Lazola because it made him even more hyperactive than he already was, tried to snatch it. The inevitable conversation followed. "I saw it first," said Kabir. "No, I did," said Rohan, and they tussled. "You can't drink it. It's probably full of seawater," warned Rohan. "You can't drink it even if it is seawater. Or not. So let go," argued Kabir. "Look, there's something gooey all round the lid. I think there's an octopus inside," Rohan said, changing tack. "I'll take a look at myself," retorted Kabir, who was small and wiry, but still pretty strong and determined when it came to wrestling with his brother. The two tugged some more, and all of a sudden, the can of cola came apart in their hands. The boys fell to the sand in shock, Rohan holding the top and Kabir the rest of it. But it wasn't cola that poured out of the can, or seawater, or even an octopus. It was smoke in long, wispy trails that rose upwards. Rohan was the first to snap out of the shock. "Run, Kabir! It's a bomb," he said, and he shouted at the top of his voice. They promptly dropped the parts of the can they were holding and ran for their lives. They must have sprinted 100 meters along the beach, but when there was no explosion to be heard as they raced away, Rohan stopped in his tracks. Kabir, who was running alongside, stopped too. They both turned around to look. In the shadow of the outcrop, where they had dropped the can of cola, something odd was happening. The can lay on the ground, still smoking, but the thick grey smoke did not disperse in the light breeze. Instead, it seemed to be congealing into a large figure of what looked like a giant. For a while, Rohan stood watching, fascinated. Then he remembered that Kabir was still with him. He looked down at his little brother and froze. "Oh, no, 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 no," Rohan thought, panicking. Kabir was staring dumbfounded at the smoky figure, and his lower lip had started to quiver, which was the worst thing that could ever happen. Rohan realized immediately that his overdramatic bomb cry had really shaken his brother. The poor thing was just following his lead now. Little Kabir usually was a tough cookie. He rarely cried or threw an unreasonable tantrum, but when he did, it was like a sweeping tornado. His family knew Kabir cried only when he was badly hurt or frightened. The sobbing and tears wouldn't stop for hours, and he would often have difficulty breathing. He could only be pacified by their mother, and it would take her long sessions of cuddling and consoling. Rohan knew that if his brother began to cry now, his mother would be, what shall we say, very angry indeed. He took a deep breath and in his calmest voice proclaimed, "Oh, look, it's a genie," as though genies were as common as flies and regularly popped out of cola cans. Kabir's lips stopped quivering. He looked at Rohan surprised. Rohan gave a chuckle for good measure to show he wasn't scared at all. There are no genies, said Kabir, growing a little less fearful as he saw Rohan's apparent cheeriness. So there, it's not a bomb and it's not a genie, said Rohan, thanking his stars. The genie part had come to him on the spur of the moment and was an idea so absurd that it had stopped his brother from crying. Of course, there are no genies, he told himself. So what was that thing then? Maybe someone filled a cola can with tear gas, Rohan mumbled, as though it sounded pretty stupid even as he said it. Let's go look, he added, beginning to get very curious. Is that a good idea? Won't it sting our eyes? Asked Kabir. We won't get too close. They ran some way and then inched closer with caution. The smoke was still swirling out of the can, but in ever-thinning wisps, as though the dregs were pouring out. Although Rohan did not want to admit it, the figure the smoke made still looked like a very large man with his back to them. It was not spreading out in the sea breeze like smoke should have. Rohan was beginning to feel uneasy, but he was even more afraid of showing his fear in front of his brother. He decided it was time to end the adventure and go back to the resort. All right, it's probably some weird, smoky chemical. Let's not mess with it, Rohan said, keeping his voice light and casual. It's definitely not a genie. Ha ha ha! Excuse me, came a booming, raspy voice from the top regions of the thick smoke. It is most definitely a genie. Who says otherwise? The smoke swirled as the large figure flamboyantly turned around to face the boys. He was about 3 times taller than an average human, with a large turbaned head, a long handlebar moustache, a frown on his grey face, and huge muscled arms folded in disapproval. It was a genie, all right, and he was looking to quell the human who had dared to call him a weird chemical, with one look from his smoky grey eyes. Except there was no one at eye level. The genie looked down and took stock of the 2 little faces raised up to his. 2 heads with masses of black hair very nearly standing on end. The genie's voice had been simply one surprise too many for Rohan and Kabir. Their legs had given way and they had both sunk to the beach, immobile. They were looking up stupidly at the giant, the shock having dissipated any fear they felt. Oh. It was the genie's turn to be surprised. Then, without any warning, he shrunk until he was roughly at eye level with them. The 2 boys still stared at him, open-mouthed. The genie dragged his wispy tail out of the cola can, and it took on the shape of a pair of legs in pointy boots. He squatted patiently in front of them. Chapter 4. Rules for the Masters. The genie was quite used to humans reacting like the 2 boys had done. He would usually wait until they snapped out of it, but these 2 were younger and smaller than the ones he usually met. The last time he had been summoned by a gang of teenagers out fishing or despoiling nature, as he liked to think of it. He shuddered at the memory of that experience. They were the ones who had bottled him up in a tin can and sealed it with chewing gum. It had been unbearably stuffy inside. The genie was quite relieved to be out, though not happy about being summoned up again so soon. As Rohan and Kabir continued to stare at him speechlessly, the genie sized up his new masters. The little one was really little, and the big one was long and gangly. The genie had a sudden unpleasant feeling. Are you a teenager? He asked Rohan. Not yet. I'm only 12. replied Rohan, who was beginning to get over his initial shock. Up close, the genie seemed more solid and clearly defined in form, but he was still smoky grey and a bit scary to look at. Although Rohan noticed his demeanour was quite non-threatening and he seemed calm, almost bored. "That's all right then," said the genie, and went quiet again. "Are you really a genie?" asked Rohan in disbelief. "What have I been telling you?" "Why aren't you blue?" piped up a small, awestruck voice at Rohan's side. "And can you turn into a piano or a tractor? And can you fly magic carpets? And can you... Does this one watch too much TV?" the genie asked Rohan, pointing to Kabir. "He does. All the time," said Rohan. "Not good for your eyes, you know, or your brains," the genie said gently to Kabir, tapping his own head. Kabir nodded, his mouth still open. "Do you grant wishes?" asked Rohan. "Ooh, the lad is quick," thought the genie. He had come straight to the point. "I might, in some cases, depending on the circumstances. It's not always advisable, you know, asking for wishes. People ask for all sorts of things that are not good for them and get into trouble. So, you do grant wishes then?" Rohan persisted. "That will be 3 each for the 2 of us." The genie threw back his head and laughed, a deep, throaty laugh that rose from his belly, travelled up his windpipe, and came out like cannon fire. He continued snorting for about half a minute. "You are a funny boy," he said, as he pretended to wipe tears of mirth from his face. "No, you don't get 3 wishes each," the genie said, readjusting his face into a serious expression. "Well, how many do we get?" asked Rohan, offended by the laughter. The genie thought for a while. "I'll grant you 1 between the 2 of you." "Ha! Never heard of a genie that granted only 1 wish. 3 is standard." "3 is standard for adults, isn't it? You're not even a teen. And this one here," he said, pointing to Kabir, "is still a toddler." "He's not a toddler. He's 8, said Rohan testily. "And we'll take 3 wishes each. Thank you." "No, son. You don't get 3 wishes. Haven't I made that clear?" the genie said. "Last time I got summoned by a group of 9 teenage boys. If I had granted them all 3 wishes each, it would have meant the end of the world. Moreover, the wishes are granted only to the finder." "Which one of you is that?" "Well, I saw the can first," began Rohan. Kabir, who had been silent up until now, quickly shot back. "No, I did." "All right, same old story. Tell you what, I'll grant you a wish each," said the genie. 3 wishes between the 2 of us," Rohan shot back. 2.5, and that's final. Take it or leave it," said the genie, in the manner of a seasoned haggler. "Half? How do you even grant half a wish?" asked Rohan. "You know," said the genie airily. "So do you want them or not?" "All right," said Rohan. Before he could say anything else, the genie went all serious-faced. "Choose wisely," he said. "I will not tell you what you can and what you can't wish for, but you must know there are rules. I'm fairly generous, but if you ask for something that is impossible for me to grant, your wish will not be granted." This came as a bit of a dampener to Rohan, whose brain was already busy working up some fantastic wishes. "Right, who's going first? We need to consult, okay?" said Rohan, drawing Kabir to one side. "By all means," said Genie, "but you will not tell the other what you are going to wish for, or tell them what to wish for. That's an automatic forfeit." "You just made that up," protested Rohan. "Rules are rules," said the genie cheerfully. Kabir, do you want to go first? Rohan asked his brother as they put their heads together to consult. Kabir nodded, his eyes bright. I'll take the next one, and then we'll make the half wish together, said Rohan. Don't ask for something silly, okay? He warned his brother. I won't, said Kabir. Rohan could see his little brother was breathless with excitement and began to regret giving him the chance to wish first. All right, he told Genie. We are ready. What do we do? Chapter 5 is called A Wish and a Half. The genie settled himself on the beach in a meditative pose. Legs folded, back straightened, and arms resting on his knees. The one making the wish will sit in front of me, he gestured with his chin, close his eyes and say, O mightiest of mighty genies, grant me in your kindness and generosity this wish that I'm about to make, and then state your wish. Mightiest of mighty genies, thought Rohan. If that wasn't completely made up, he didn't know what was. But he nudged Kabir, went forward, sat cross-legged in front of the genie, closed his eyes, and waited for his brother to give him the signal. Rohan, meanwhile, sidled up to the genie, out of Kabir's earshot, and whispered, This is the half wish, okay? Not the full one. So we will have 2 to go after this. So be it, said the genie slowly. Go, Kabir, said Rohan. O mighty genie, began Kabir. Mightiest of mighty genies, prompted Rohan, giving the genie a quick look to see if the wrong chant would result in a forfeit. Mightiest of mighty genies, Kabir corrected himself. Generously and kindly, I would like to make a wish. Kabir had forgotten the chant completely and got it wrong. But the genie shrugged good-humouredly. What do you wish for, child? Can I open my eyes, please? Now, I need to see. All right, go on. Kabir opened his eyes and began to fish in his pockets. Some pebbles and shells fell out, and a few seconds later, he held a miniature plastic car in his hand. Rohan was horrified. Not that stupid car, he thought. That silver-colored plastic model of a convertible was Kabir's greatest treasure. Their father had bought Kabir the car on his 5th birthday from a fairground, and he had never been parted from that toy since. He played with it only occasionally, but carried it around in his pocket all the time. It accompanied him to the playground, to school, to shops, and on holidays. It was the last thing he checked before he went to sleep, and the first thing he reached out for when he woke up. To be fair to him, Kabir took good care of the toy. But it was plastic after all, so the silver paint had worn off, the bumper and tail lights had broken, the tiny steering column was missing, and the front wheels were nearly coming off. Daddy had offered to buy him a new one, but they could not find the same model, and Kabir wouldn't take any other. Rohan knew what was coming. Can you get me a new car, like this one? Kabir held it out for the genie to examine. Let me see, the genie said, taking the toy and giving it a once-over. Okay, wait here, he said, and disappeared in a puff of smoke before the 2 boys could even move. Kabir regretted it the instant the genie was gone. He was never ever parted from the car. He let no one handle it, not even Rohan. He realized it was a foolish thing to do, and he looked at Rohan pleadingly. Don't worry, Rohan assured him, but without much conviction. This was a total disaster, he thought. But the very next moment, the genie was back with a spanking new toy, which he gave to a thoroughly shocked Kabir. It was the exact replica of the silver convertible, the exact size and shape of the original. But it was no longer the shabby, worn-out plastic. In fact, there was nothing plasticky about it. It was metal die-cast. The silver body sparkled as Kabir held it up to the light. The grille, the tiny door handles and the hubs looked and shone like real chrome. The seats and the steering wheel were covered in leather. The dashboard had shiny little silver dials and were made of polished wood. The wheels were solid rubber with deep treads. The roof was black leather and could be pulled up and down. The toy looked more stylish than the most expensive cars they had ever seen. Kabir ran the car on his palm experimentally, and his face lit up like 1,000 bulbs at once. It must be good, thought Rohan, realizing that he would now have to grovel on his knees to even touch the toy. So that completes your wish. Off you go, said the genie to Kabir, who thanked him and obliged by dashing off to the nearest flat piece of rock he could find to give the car a test run. He completely forgot about Rohan. All right, you're up next, said the genie, turning to Rohan. I have a question though, said Rohan. You said you would grant half a wish. How's that half a wish? Well, he asked for a new car, didn't he? I fixed the old one. Where can you fix it up like that? Asked Rohan. At the special factory us genies have, Nosy Parker. No more questions. Do you want your wish or not? All right, said Rohan. He was thinking furiously. He did not want his precious wish to be wasted like Kabir's. Toy car? Seriously? You could get that from any old shop. The genie here seemed to be a rather capable sort, and Rohan wondered how far he could stretch these abilities. Now, this is not strictly a wish, he began. I'm just testing to see if this falls into the category of impossible to do. So this one does not count, okay? All right. If I were to ask you, hypothetically, Rohan had picked the word up from his father and was quite proud of it, to make me a super rich man, like someone with lots of cars, a big house, lots of money in the bank, so I didn't have to work ever. Would it be possible for you to grant my wish? Not work? The genie's brows came together in a deep frown. He did not speak for a while, and Rohan was starting to regret asking the question. It is possible, hypothetically, said the genie, and Rohan sighed in relief. But those sorts of wishes are usually granted to people over 50. I could make an exception for you, though. I could make an exception. However, I'd first have to turn you into an adult aged over 50. So, hypothetically, you would be a very rich man who is older than his father. Does that work for you? Rohan was horrified. What? No! That's the only way to do it, the genie said, shrugging. Okay then, can I get a magic pen that does all my homework and writes all my exams for me automatically? Ooh, isn't that clever? Is that what you want? No, just checking, said Rohan quickly. No can do, said the genie, shaking his head. We've run out of magic pens and no longer stock them. Stopped production at the factory. What do you think is the first question every student who summons a genie asks? Can I have a magic pen? If we handed a magic pen to all of them, what would be the point of giving homework and assignments at school? We might as well shut all the schools down. Can you do that? Asked Rohan, sounding hopeful. No, and enough of your hypothetical questions. Worst genie ever, muttered Rohan to himself. Most of his planned wishes were along the same lines, and now he was not sure he could use them. He thought about it for a while and then said, okay, I'm ready to make my wish. Do I have to start with that stupid chant? Yes, every word of it, the genie said. He seemed to be enjoying himself. Oh, mightiest of mighty genies, grant me in your kindness and generosity this wish that I'm about to make. Rohan reeled off. "What do you wish for, boy?" the genie asked. "I want a mountain bike," Rohan began, but was interrupted by Kabir, who had come to watch. "But you already have a bicycle." "It's not a mountain bike." "And shush! Go away!" he said angrily to his brother. "I want a mountain bike exactly like my friend Omar's," he finished. Before Rohan could elaborate, the genie said, "Okay," and vanished. Chapter 6 is, "But that's not what I want." Rohan shot up from where he was sitting and hopped about. "Oh no, I haven't told him what Omar's bike is like." He need not have worried. A few seconds later, the genie reappeared with a bike. "Wow," said the brothers together. "That was quick," added Rohan, as he ran his hands along the shiny black and red frame of the bike, its saddle and handlebars. It was a TBX Speedster, the same model as Omar's, in the same red and black color, with the red water bottle exactly like Omar's slotted in the frame, and a steel tiger claw shaped talisman exactly like Omar's hanging from the handlebars. The genie is thorough, thought Rohan. This was all a great deal more precise than he would have liked. And then Rohan gave a cry of horror. Stenciled down the front column of the bike were the words OMAR. Rohan read out loud. "You haven't got me a bike like Omar's, you've got me Omar's bike." "You asked me for a bike like Omar's, and the bike most like Omar's is Omar's bike. And here it is," said the genie. "What are you talking about?" cried Rohan. "Here's what you asked for. A bike exactly like Omar's," said the genie, as though explaining to someone very slow-witted. "So, what makes a bike most like Omar's? It's a TBX Speedster? Check. It's the ultra-light model with 5 light gears? Check that too. It's red and black? Check. It has a red water bottle stuck to it and a talisman for good luck? Check and check. And what is the most distinguishing feature of Omar's bike? It belongs to Omar. Check and double check." "I can't take Omar's bike," said Rohan. "I don't want it. And even if I do take it, Mummy will kill me." Rohan's mother had strong views on borrowing other people's things. If she ever found out he was riding Omar's stolen bike, Rohan shuddered at the thought. He knew the genie's arguments were full of holes, but he was too disappointed to counter them. "Take it back, I don't want it," he said unhappily. "Too bad. You should have been more specific," the genie told him. He snapped his fingers and the bike disappeared. Rohan plonked down on the sand, thoroughly dejected. His enthusiasm had vanished. The genie felt sorry for him. "So did Kabir. You can share my toy car, you know," he said kindly to Rohan, who waved him away. "You have another wish," the genie reminded him. "What's the point? I still won't get what I want," whined Rohan. "That is because you are not thinking very clearly about what you truly want. You have been thinking about things you think will make you happy, but you can't be too sure about any of them," the genie lectured like a philosopher. "So what do you know for sure makes you happy? Every time." Rohan thought hard for a few minutes. "I like riding bikes. Does it matter what bike you are on?" Rohan thought some more. "No, not really," he said. "I just enjoy riding." "Well then, the one you have is as good as any other. What else?" asked the genie. "I like climbing. It's the best thing in the whole world. The feeling you get when you get up there, on top." A strange light came into his eyes and dimmed just as quickly. "But Mummy doesn't let me anymore." "Interesting. And why is that?" "Because I hurt myself sometimes and I almost always get my clothes all dirty and torn." "Ooh, torn clothes? Easily fixed." "What? How?" You can wish for it. Wish that my clothes won't tear? Asked Rohan dubiously. Not exactly, said the genie, scratching his chin. Tell you what, you want to go shinning up things without tearing your clothes, right? Consider that wished for, and I'll go fix it up. What? You don't want me to sit in front of you and do the chant and state exactly what I want? Nah, that's all for effect. Shall I be off then? Okay, said Rohan exasperatedly. The genie popped back a few seconds later. He seemed to be empty-handed. All right, stand up straight and don't move, he commanded. Rohan obeyed with a somewhat confused expression, still not sure what the genie was up to. The genie raised his hands and Rohan saw the clenched fist. He ducked from the anticipated blow, but it was just a shower of sparkly dust. The genie was sprinkling dust on his clothes. Rohan was wearing a white t-shirt and a pair of blue beach shorts and with a pattern of yellow flowers on them. When the genie had finished, he was still wearing them and he looked exactly the same. What was that about? Asked Rohan. That, my boy, is genie magic. You are now wearing a pair of shorts and a t-shirt that will never get soiled or frayed or tattered or torn, not even if you put them through a shredder. So go, climb all you want to, the genie said, with an air of magnanimity. Rohan realized the genie had not spotted the problem. The final chapter is called Goodbye, Live Well. I cannot go around wearing beach shorts and a t-shirt all the time. We don't even go to beaches that often, and there's usually nothing to climb on the beaches anyway. So what do I do with these? Rohan complained. He was peeved at the genie's self-satisfied expression. What a naysayer, the genie retorted. That is no ordinary set of clothes. It can change color, pattern and style at your wish. It can change into a school uniform, a pair of cargo pants, or jeans, or a girl's dress, if that's the sort of thing you like. He paused and then added slyly, but you must wish it to resemble a set of clothes you already own. So you can't turn it into expensive branded clothing you see in any shop. Right, but my clothes usually rip when I get my arms and legs scratched. Will these protect me from getting hurt? The smaller scrapes and scratches? Yes, but they won't stop your bones from breaking, so you do have to be careful. A good climber is always smart and cautious, the genie reminded him. And with practice, you will learn to shin up and down trees and rocks without damaging your clothes or limbs at all. Yes, said Rohan, this time with a happier air as the usefulness of the gift struck him. He ran his sandy hands down the sides of his shorts and saw that the grains did not stick to the cloth. The genie stood by like an indulgent uncle as Rohan tried to pull out the seams of his t-shirt and covered himself with sand to test out the new clothes. Okay, the genie said, tired of watching after a while. It's time for me to go. Before Rohan could respond, he said, as an afterthought, oh, I forgot to tell you, the magic will wear off once you leave school. What? Why? What will I do after that? After that, the genie said sternly, you will find some gainful employment and buy your own clothes. All right, said Rohan grumpily, but he was satisfied at having gained something after all. Thank you for this. How are you going to get back? The genie gave the can of cola a disappointed look. Its top was lying some distance away in the sand. I suppose I have to get back into that cola can, he said with a look of distaste, although a bottle would have been so nice. Anyway, once I get in, you have to seal the can and throw it into the sea. Do you live inside cans? Asked Rohan, fascinated. Don't you live in lamps or something? I am a genie of the sea. I float in the water, and tin cans are horribly stuffy. But I've spent so many years living inside plastic bottles and cans now, I'm used to the discomfort, the genie said. Time was when we used to float around in beautiful thick glass bottles, specially made for us by people we granted wishes to. What would I not give for a stained glass bottle with a long stem and a real cork for a stopper? He added dreamily. We can't do stained glass bottles, but we can definitely do better than a tin can, said Rohan. Wait here for a while, will you? He told the genie. Kabir, come with me. The two brothers sprinted off to the resort. They had befriended some of the housekeeping staff the day before. The hotel used all kinds of cleaning stuff, and Rohan was hoping he could get some empty bottles off them. All the ones in their cottage were plastic. The housekeeping people did not have any glass bottles because the cleaning fluids all came in plastic containers, but they helpfully directed the boys to the restaurant kitchen. The kitchen staff were a helpful lot too. When the boys asked for a glass bottle to play with, they gave them a choice of empty ketchup bottles, spice containers and oil cans. But Rohan noticed on one of the shelves of the kitchen a long-stemmed, onion-shaped bottle, brown, glass, with a plastic stopper fastened with a metal clip. It was perfect. It was nearly empty too. The chef drained the rest of the liquid into a small bowl and gave the bottle to the boys. The label read apple cider vinegar. The two ran happily out to the beach, washed the bottle several times in seawater, and ran back to where they had left the genie. The genie's face lit up when he saw what they had got for him. It smelled weird, but we washed it properly. It's all wet though. Would you mind getting into it? Asked Rohan. It's lovely, said the genie, his face split by a happy grin. Oh, it's been such a long time since I've been inside a bottle. Thank you, boys. Live well. And so saying, he whooshed into the bottle. The boys stoppered it. Rohan held the bottle up against the light and saw that it had fogged up inside. He was a good egg, the genie, Rohan thought, and suddenly remembered they hadn't asked the genie his name. Ah, never mind. Shall we send him back then, Kabir? His brother nodded. Rohan clambered up on the rocks, bottle in hand, as Kabir watched. Rohan reached the top without damaging the bottle or his clothes. He took a deep breath and threw the bottle with all his might into the sea. The bottle splashed into the water and then, much to Rohan's surprise, went skipping along the surface on its own. The genie was going home. The boys went back to the resort. The afternoon nap had put their parents in a rather good mood. The first thing Kabir did, predictably, was to spill the whole story to them. They weren't listening. Oh, did this thing wash up on the beach? What a find! Looks like your old toy, doesn't it? It's rather grand, said their father, as Kabir held up his toy car. No, Daddy, a genie got this for me, insisted Kabir. His parents laughed and patted him on the head. Rohan smiled but did not say a thing. And that's the end of the story.